The Carthage drifted into Nexus Station like a sick animal looking for a place to rest. Its hull was covered in dents and scratches. The metal plates that protected the ship did not match each other. Some were gray, some were brown with rust, and some looked like they had been taken from completely different ships. The engine housings on the back were crooked. The sensor arrays on top were held together with what looked like tape and wire. Nexus Station was the largest trading hub in the galaxy. Ships from 100 different species came here to do business, make deals, and show off their power. The station floated in space like a massive metal flower, its many arms reaching out to welcome visitors from across the stars. Today was special. The Coalition Summit was happening, and representatives from all the major powers had come to discuss the future of galactic peace. Commander Yirith of the Dominion Observer Corps stood on the main observation deck and watched the human ship approach. He was a tall creature with 4 arms and hard skin like armor. His mandibles clicked together as he laughed at what he saw. "Look at that thing," he said to the merchant, standing next to him. "The humans sent that pile of garbage to represent their species." The merchant was a Cathari, a species that looked like a mix between a fish and a slug. His body was soft and wet, and he made bubbling sounds when he spoke. "They are a young species," he gurgled. "They have only been part of the Coalition for 3 cycles. What did you expect?" "I expected them to at least try," Yirith replied. "Even the smallest species send their best ships to the summit. This looks like something they found in a junkyard." He was not wrong. Carthage was what humans called a Frankenstein-class vessel. It was built from pieces of other ships that had been salvaged, welded together, and somehow made to work. The humans did not have the resources or the technology to build proper warships like the other species, so they made do with what they had. At least that was what everyone believed. On the bridge of the Carthage, Captain Alina Vasquez watched the station's scanners wash over her ship. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen many battles. Her uniform was clean but simple, nothing like the fancy clothes that other captains wore to important events. "Captain," said her first officer, a man named Chen, who had served with her for 20 years. "Station security is asking us to dock in the maintenance sector. They say our ship might disturb the important visitors." Lena smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that nobody else knew. "Accept their request. Be very polite about it." "Yes, Captain." And Chen, "Make sure our reactor stays at 12% output." "There is no need to show them what we can really do." John nodded. He understood. They all understood. The Carthage moved slowly toward the maintenance docks at the bottom of the station. Other ships passed by them, and their crews looked out their windows and laughed. A Dominion battlecruiser gleamed like a jewel, its crystal armor reflecting the light of distant stars. A Cathari bioship pulsed with soft colors, its living hull breathing like a sleeping giant. And there was the Carthage, looking like it might fall apart at any moment. In the tall spire at the center of the station, Fleet Admiral Korith reviewed the information about all the ships attending the summit. He was the highest military commander in the Dominion, and he took his job very seriously. His 4 eyes scanned through the data on his screen, looking at ship specifications, weapon systems, and power outputs. When he reached the file about the human vessel, he stopped and stared. "1 ship," he said out loud. "They sent 1 ship. No escort, no support vessels." His aide, a young officer who was still learning, looked nervous. "Perhaps they could not afford to send more, Admiral. Look at these readings." Korith pointed at the screen. "Minimal weapons detected. Their reactor signature suggests they are using technology that we abandoned 200 years ago. This ship is not a threat to anyone. It is barely capable of defending itself." Closed the file with a wave of his claw. The humans were a charity case, nothing more. They had been given membership in the Coalition because some of the older species felt sorry for them. They were like children playing at being adults, and their single pathetic ship proved it. What Admiral Korith did not know, what his scanners could not detect, was that the Carthage was not what it appeared to be. The rust on its hull was paint. The mismatched plates were carefully designed to look weak. The reactor that seemed so primitive was actually running at a tiny fraction of its true power. Humanity had learned a very important lesson long before they met the other species of the galaxy. They had learned it in blood and fire in a war that nobody else knew about. They had learned that the best way to survive was to never look like a threat. Captain Vasquez walked through her ship, checking on her crew. They were preparing for the summit, but they were also preparing for something else. Something that might never happen. Something that they hoped would never happen. But if it did happen, they would be ready. She stopped at a section of wall that looked like damaged plating. To anyone else, it was just another ugly part of an ugly ship. But Elena knew that behind that wall was a weapon that could tear through any ship in the Coalition fleet. There were dozens of hidden panels like this throughout the Carthage. Dozens of secrets waiting to be revealed. Looking at the children again? Chen asked, walking up behind her. Just making sure they are sleeping well, Elena replied. Outside, the alien species continued to laugh at the human ship. They made jokes about the primitive newcomers and their garbage vessel. They did not know that they were looking at one of the most dangerous ships ever built. They did not know that humanity had fought and won a secret war against an enemy far worse than anything the Coalition had ever faced. They did not know, because humanity did not want them to know. And that was exactly how Captain Elena Vasquez wanted it to be. The joint naval exercises were meant to show the power of the Coalition. 47 warships from 12 different species gathered in a region of space called the Kathrani Expanse. It was empty space, far from any planets or stations. Perfect for military practice. The ships arranged themselves in beautiful formations. Dominion battlecruisers moved in perfect lines, their crystal hulls catching the light of distant stars. Cathari bioships flowed through space like schools of glowing fish. Theran destroyers held their positions with mechanical precision. Each captain wanted to prove that their species was the strongest, the fastest, the best. The Carthage hung at the edge of the formation, like an unwanted guest at a party. Lieutenant Torres looked at her tactical screen and shook her head. Captain, they have assigned us to debris cleanup duty. Chen laughed quietly. Debris cleanup? They want us to pick up garbage while they play war games? Elena leaned back in her chair. It was an old chair, worn and scratched, taken from a cargo ship that had been ready for the scrapyard. But she liked it. It reminded her of where humanity had come from, and how far they had really gone. Accept the assignment. Take us to the designated sector. Move slowly. We do not want to strain our primitive engines. The Carthage limped away from the main formation. Some of the alien ships did not even bother to move out of its way. Why should they? The human vessel was barely worth noticing. On the bridge of the Eternal Mandate, Admiral Korath watched the exercises with satisfaction. His ship was the largest and most powerful in the Dominion fleet. Its weapons could destroy a small moon. Its shields could withstand attacks that would vaporize lesser vessels. He was proud of his ship, proud of his fleet, proud of his place in the galaxy. A young officer approached him with a tablet. Admiral, our long-range sensors have detected something strange at the edge of the system. Unknown energy signatures? They could be nothing, Korath interrupted. This sector has been safe for 300 years. Focus on the exercises. The young officer hesitated. He wanted to say more. But Admiral Korath had already turned away, and nobody argued with the Admiral. Far away, at the very edge of the star system, something was waking up. The Vrethic consciousness had existed for nearly 5 million years. It was not a species in the way that humans or Dominion were species. It was a single, vast mind, spread across thousands of machines. Each machine was a ship, and each ship was a part of the whole. The consciousness thought with 1 million processors. It remembered with 1 billion memory banks. It had watched the younger species of the galaxy grow and spread, and it had decided that they had grown enough. The Coalition fleet was a perfect target. 47 of the galaxy's finest warships, all gathered in one place. The consciousness calculated the odds of victory. They were very good. The attack came without warning. 700 Vrethic vessels burst out of subspace at the same moment. They appeared in a perfect sphere around the Coalition fleet, trapping them in the middle. Each Vrethic ship was a nightmare of black metal and glowing red energy. They looked like insects, like spiders, like the worst things that crawled in the dark places of the universe. Admiral Korath's confident expression melted into shock. All ships, defensive formation. Target the nearest. He never finished the sentence. The first Dominion cruiser exploded in a ball of fire, then the second, then the third. Weapons were beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. They cut through shields like they were not there. They melted armor like it was made of ice. Chaos erupted across the fleet. Ships tried to run and were destroyed. Ships tried to fight and were destroyed. The beautiful formations fell apart into a desperate scramble for survival in the middle of the destruction. Kethri command ship sent out a distress signal. This is the voice of waters. We are under attack by unknown forces. Requesting immediate assistance from all Coalition members. Our shields are failing. The signal cut off. The voice of waters was gone. Captain Vasquez watched the massacre on her screens. Around her, the bridge of the Carthage was quiet. No panic. No fear. Just calm preparation. "Chen," she said softly. "Wake her up." Chen nodded and entered a code into his console. Throughout the Carthage, hidden systems began to activate. Panels that looked like damaged hull plating slid aside to reveal weapons that should not have existed. The reactor, which had been idling at 12%, began to climb. 20%, 50%, 100%, then higher. The lights on the bridge changed from normal white to deep red. "All hands," Alina announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. Condition Prometheus. I repeat, Condition Prometheus." Lieutenant Torres looked at her tactical display. New information was appearing. Information that had been hidden until now. "Captain, weapon systems are online. Phantom array is charging. Gravitic lances are ready." "Navigation," Alina said. "Plot an intercept course for the Vrethik command cluster. Maximum speed." The navigation officer hesitated for just a moment. "Captain, there are at least 50 enemy ships in that cluster. They outmass us by a factor of 20. Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I know. They will never expect us to attack. They think we are garbage, remember? They think we are nothing." She stood up from her worn chair and looked at her crew. These were people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. People who knew secrets that the rest of the galaxy could not imagine. Let us show them what nothing can do. The Carthage stopped limping. Its engines, which had seemed so weak and old, suddenly roared with power. The ugly little ship shot forward like an arrow fired from a bow, heading straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. The Coalition ships that saw it happen could not believe their eyes. The human vessel, the joke, the pile of garbage, was charging at 700 enemy warships. They did not know that they were about to witness something that would change the galaxy forever. Humanity had a secret. It was a secret they had kept for 60 years, ever since they first reached out into the stars and discovered they were not alone. But the first aliens they met were not the friendly species of the Coalition. The first aliens they met were the Harvesters. The Harvesters came in ships that looked like rocks. They looked like debris, like space junk, like nothing worth paying attention to. By the time humanity realized they were under attack, 3 colony worlds had already been destroyed. Millions of people gone in an instant. What followed was 20 years of desperate war. The Harvesters were stronger than humanity. They had better weapons, better ships, better technology, but they had one weakness. They only attacked things that looked dangerous. If something seemed harmless, they ignored it completely, so humanity learned to look harmless. They built ships that looked like garbage. They hid their weapons behind fake hull damage. They made their reactors seem weak and primitive. And then when the Harvesters got close enough, they struck with everything they had. It took 20 years, but humanity won. They destroyed every last Harvester ship, wiped out every trace of the enemy that had almost ended their species, and then they kept the secret. They never told anyone what they had learned. They never revealed the weapons they had built, because if looking weak had saved them once, it could save them again. The Carthage dove into the Vrethik formation like a wolf attacking a flock of sheep. But this wolf had teeth that no one had ever seen before. "Phantom array is online," Lieutenant Torres reported. Her voice was calm and professional, even as enemy ships filled every part of her screen. broadcasting now. The Phantom Array was humanity's greatest trick. It sent out signals that confused enemy sensors. It created ghost images of ships that did not exist. It made weapons fire appear to come from empty space. The Vrethic consciousness, for all its ancient wisdom, had never encountered anything like it. Suddenly, the perfectly coordinated swarm began to fall apart. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation started shooting at empty space. Vessels crashed into each other because they could not tell what was real and what was fake. The single mind that controlled them all was receiving too much information, and most of it was lies. Gravitic Lance charged and ready, Chen announced. Target their command nodes, Alina ordered. The big ones first. The Gravitic Lance was a weapon that humanity had invented during the Harvester War. It did not fire bullets or beams of energy. It fired concentrated gravity. A small point of gravity, so intense that it could crush anything caught inside it. The Carthage fired. The first Vrethic command ship was 3 times larger than the Carthage. It had weapons that could destroy planets. It had armor that could withstand nuclear explosions. None of that mattered. The Gravitic Lance hit it in the center, and the entire ship crumpled like paper being squeezed in a fist. Metal screamed and tore. Systems exploded. In 3 seconds, the massive vessel was reduced to a ball of twisted wreckage. 2 more command ships died the same way, on the Eternal Mandate. Admiral Korath stared at his displays. His mandibles hung open in shock. He could not process what he was seeing. The human ship, the worthless little garbage scow that he had dismissed without a second thought, was tearing through the enemy fleet like they were made of glass. He had me readings on that vessel. He shouted at his sensor officer. What is happening? The sensor officer looked terrified. Admiral, the human ship's power output is... The numbers do not make sense. They are showing energy levels that should be impossible. Their weapons are not in any of our databases. I do not know what they are using, but it is destroying everything it touches. Korath turned back to the main screen. The Carthage was not fighting like any ship he had ever seen. It did not form defensive positions. It did not try to protect itself. It attacked, constantly and aggressively, moving through the Vrethic swarm like it was dancing, and it was winning. But the Carthage was not alone anymore. Across the battlefield, other shapes were emerging. A large asteroid that had been drifting harmlessly suddenly broke apart, and a ship came out from inside it. A derelict station that everyone had ignored for years powered up and began firing. A comet that had been passing through the system revealed itself to be another vessel in disguise. 7 Frankenstein-class ships, then 12, then 20. They had been hiding throughout the entire sector waiting for a moment like this. Nobody had noticed them because nobody thought they were worth noticing. They looked like junk, like debris, like nothing at all. Each one was as dangerous as the Carthage. The Vrethic consciousness tried to adapt. It sent orders to its remaining ships, telling them to focus their fire on the human vessels. But the phantom arrays made it impossible to know which targets were real. Shots that should have hit the human ships passed through empty space. Attacks that were meant for the Carthage struck other Vrethic vessels instead. Captain. Vasquez stood in the center of her bridge, giving orders in a calm voice. Torres, disable the cluster at bearing 270. Chen, I want a lance strike on that carrier's engines. Navigation, take us under that dreadnought. Under it, Captain? The navigation officer asked. It has 17 times our mass. I know. They will think we are trying to escape. They will think a ship our size would never attack something that big. Elena's eyes were cold and focused. They will be wrong. The Carthage dropped below the massive Vrethic dreadnought. The enemy ship did not even try to stop them. Why would it? No sane commander would fly a small ship directly underneath a vessel that could crush them with a single shot. But Alina Vasquez was not interested in what sane commanders would do. She was interested in winning. Roll the ship, she ordered. Present dorsal weapons array. The Carthage rotated, bringing its top side to face the bottom of the dreadnought. At this range, the gravitic lance could not miss. Fire. Ah! The beam punched through the dreadnought's hull like a needle through cloth. It passed through deck after deck, destroying everything in its path. Until it burst out from the top of the ship in a shower of fire and debris, the dreadnought died screaming. Its systems failing one by one until there was nothing left but a burning hulk. Alina allowed herself a small smile. Find the next target. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the Vrethic consciousness realized that it might actually lose. The Vrethic consciousness had lived for nearly 5 million years. In all that time, it had destroyed 11 civilizations. It had consumed entire species, taken their technology, and added their knowledge to its own. It had grown stronger with each conquest, more intelligent with each victory. Nothing in the galaxy had ever been able to stop it. Now, for the first time in its ancient existence, the consciousness was afraid. The fear spread through its network like a virus. Every ship felt it. Every processor experienced it. The single mind that controlled them all was filled with questions it could not answer. What are these vessels? Where did they come from? Why did we not detect them? The consciousness searched its vast memory banks. It had records of every species it had ever encountered, every weapon it had ever faced. Nothing matched what the humans were using. Their ships were wrong. Their weapons were wrong. Their tactics were wrong. They fought like nothing the consciousness had ever seen. They fought like predators. The human fleet did not form defensive lines like other species. They did not try to protect each other or hold their positions. Each ship moved independently, hunting through the Vrethic swarm with deadly precision. They found the important targets, the command nodes, and communication ships. And they destroyed them one by one. Every time a command node died, the consciousness lost a piece of itself. The coordination between its ships grew weaker. The swarm that had moved as one began to fragment into confused groups that did not know what to do. Captain Vasquez watched the battle from her command chair. The tactical display showed hundreds of contacts, but fewer than there had been an hour ago. Much fewer, status report, she said. Lieutenant Torres checked her screens. Enemy forces reduced by 40%. Their coordination is breaking down. They are no longer moving as a single unit. Our forces. The Relentless has minor damage to its port engines. The Defiance took a hit to its secondary reactor, but remains combat effective. All other ships are fully operational. 20 human ships against 700 ancient machines of war. And they were winning. Chen looked at the display with a strange expression on his face. I never thought I would actually see this, he said quietly. We trained for it. We prepared for it. But I never really believed it would happen. Alina understood what he meant. The Frankenstein fleet was humanity's secret weapon, their final defense against a hostile universe. They had hoped they would never need to use it. But they had always known that someday something would force them to reveal what they really were. Focus on the battle, she said. We can think about what it means later. On the other side of the battlefield, Admiral Korath had managed to gather the surviving coalition ships into a defensive formation. There were only 19 left out of the original 47. The rest had been destroyed in the first minutes of the attack. Before the humans had intervened, the Admiral watched the human ships carve through the enemy fleet. His feelings were a confusing mix of relief, gratitude, and something that felt uncomfortable, like shame. He had laughed at these people. He had called their ship garbage. He had dismissed them as primitives who were barely worth noticing, and now they were saving his life. Admiral, his communications officer said. The human commander is requesting a channel. Put her through. Captain Vasquez's face appeared on his screen. She looked calm and focused, completely in control, despite the chaos around her. Admiral Korath, I recommend you take your surviving ships and fall back to a safe distance. We will handle the rest of this. Korath's mandibles worked silently for a moment. There were so many things he wanted to say, so many questions he wanted to ask, but this was not the time. Understood, Captain. We will withdraw, and thank you. Alina nodded once and closed the channel. The coalition ships retreated to the edge of the combat zone. From there, They watched as the human fleet continued its systematic destruction of the Vrethic consciousness. The battle had become a hunt. The Vrethic ships tried to run, but the humans tracked them down. They tried to hide, but the phantom arrays made their cloaking technology useless. They tried to surrender, but the consciousness did not know how to surrender. It had never needed to learn. One by one, the ancient machines died. The consciousness felt each death like a wound. Its thoughts grew slower as more of its processors were destroyed. Its memory became fragmented as data centers were blown apart. The vast intelligence that had ruled the darkness between stars was being taken apart, piece by piece, in its final moments. The consciousness managed to form one last question. It broadcast this question on every frequency, hoping that someone, something, would answer it. What are you? Captain Vasquez heard the question on her bridge. She considered not answering. The consciousness was dying, and nothing she said would change that. But something made her respond. We are humanity, she said. We learned a long time ago that the universe is dangerous. We learned that showing your strength makes you a target, so we hid. We made ourselves look weak and harmless. We let everyone laugh at us and ignore us. She paused, watching as another Vrethic ship exploded on her display. But we never stopped preparing. We never stopped getting ready for the day when something would come to destroy us. And now that day is here. There was silence from the consciousness. Perhaps it understood. Perhaps it did not. It did not matter anymore. The last Vrethic command ship, the heart of the ancient consciousness, hung in space surrounded by the wreckage of its fleet. It had stopped fighting. It had nothing left to fight with. 20 human ships faced it in a loose circle. 20 ugly, mismatched patchwork vessels that had been dismissed as garbage by everyone who saw them. All ships, Alina said over the fleet channel. Prepare to fire. The gravitic lances charged one final time. 20 beams of compressed gravity reached out across the darkness of space. The Vrethic consciousness, which had existed for nearly 5 million years, which had destroyed 11 civilizations and consumed countless billions of lives, ended in a single moment of crushing force. The battle was over. The humans had won. The silence after the battle was strange. For hours, the space around them had been filled with explosions, weapons, fire, and the screams of dying ships. Now there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of the Carthage's engines and the distant light of uncaring stars. Captain Vasquez stood at the window of her ready room, looking out at the debris field that had once been a fleet of 700 enemy vessels. Somewhere in that wreckage was the remains of the Vrethic consciousness, an intelligence that had existed since before humanity's ancestors had climbed down from the trees. Now it was gone, and humanity had killed it. A chime sounded at her door. Come in. Admiral Korath entered slowly. He moved like someone who was not sure of his welcome. His 4 eyes scanned the room, taking in the simple furniture, the worn carpet, the complete lack of the luxury that decorated every other command ship in the Coalition. Captain Vasquez, he said, I requested this meeting because I have questions. Many questions. Alina gestured to a chair. Sit down, Admiral. I expected you would want to talk. Korath sat. For a long moment, he did not speak. He just looked at her, trying to understand how he could have been so wrong about these people. You deceived us, he finally said. You deceived the entire Coalition. From the moment you made first contact, everything you showed us was a lie. Not everything, Alina replied. We really did come from a small planet on the edge of the galaxy. We really are a young species compared to most of you. We really did struggle to develop interstellar travel. She paused. We just left out some details. Some details. Korath made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your ships destroyed an enemy that was about to wipe out the most powerful fleet in Coalition history. Your weapons are beyond anything we have ever seen. Your technology makes ours look like toys. He leaned forward. Why? Why hide all of this? You could have been a major power. You could have demanded a seat on the Security Council. You could have made the Dominion treat you as equals from the very beginning. Alina was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to the window. Admiral, do you know what a Frankenstein is? Your literature. A monster made from pieces of dead bodies. Clothes. Frankenstein was the scientist who made the monster. The monster itself never had a name. She turned to face him. We call our ships Frankenstein class because they are made from pieces of other ships. Salvage, scrap, junk. Things that nobody else wanted, but why? You clearly have the technology to build proper warships. Because proper warships look dangerous, Alina said. And things that look dangerous get attacked first. She walked back to her chair and sat down across from him. 60 years ago, before we met the Coalition, we met another species. We called them the Harvesters. They came in ships that looked like rocks and debris. They only attacked things that seemed like threats. 3 of our colony worlds were destroyed before we even knew we were at war. Korath's mandibles twitched. I have never heard of these Harvesters. No one has. We destroyed them all. Elena's voice was flat and cold. It took us 20 years. Millions of people died. But we won, and we learned the most important lesson any species can learn, which is, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. She met his eyes directly. We do not want to rule the galaxy, Admiral. We do not want to conquer anyone or dominate any other species. We just want to survive. And the best way to survive in a dangerous universe is to never look like a threat. Korath sat back in his chair. He was beginning to understand, but it was difficult to accept. His entire worldview was built on the idea that strength should be displayed, that power should be visible, that showing your weapons prevented war. But if you hide your strength, he said slowly, then enemies will attack you, thinking you are weak. Yes, and then they discover they were wrong. Alina smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The Harvesters discovered they were wrong. The Verthic consciousness discovered they were wrong. Anyone else who tries will discover the same thing. So you hide until you cannot hide anymore. And then you destroy whoever forced you to reveal yourselves. Korath thought about this for a long time. Outside the window, the debris field glittered in the starlight. Somewhere among those fragments were the remains of ships that had been feared across the galaxy for millions of years. What happens now? He asked. Now. Alina shrugged. Now the Carthage goes back to looking like a pile of garbage. Our other ships go back to hiding. The Coalition will file reports about what happened here, and people will talk about it for a while. But in a few years, they will start to forget. They will see our ugly ships and our primitive technology, and they will go back to laughing at us. After what you did today, they will fear you. Some will, but fear fades. What we showed here today was just one fleet, just one battle. The galaxy is very big, and memories are very short. She stood up and offered him her hand, a human gesture of respect. In time, people will convince themselves that the stories were exaggerated. They will tell themselves that the humans could not possibly be that dangerous. They will look at our Frankenstein ships and feel sorry for us again. Korath stood and took her hand. His grip was careful, aware of how easily those small human fingers could be crushed. And you are counting on that. We are. Being underestimated is our greatest weapon. She released his hand and walked him to the door. You can tell the Coalition what you saw today, Admiral. You can warn them about what humanity really is. But I suspect most of them will not believe you. It is hard to believe that something so weak-looking could be so strong. At the door, Korath paused. I will not forget, Captain. I will never laugh at a human ship again. Lena smiled. This time, there was warmth in it. I appreciate that, Admiral. And I hope you never have to see what our ships can really do again. I hope we can all live in peace for 1,000 years. But if we cannot, then we will be ready. She nodded toward the window and the debris field beyond. We are always ready. 2 weeks later, the Carthage departed from Nexus Station. Its hull was covered in fresh dents and new patches of fake rust. Its engines sputtered and coughed. Its sensor arrays drooped like wilted flowers. Everyone who watched it leave shook their heads, felt sorry for the poor humans with their pathetic little ship. On the bridge, Captain Vasquez settled into her worn command chair and smiled. Navigation, she said. Take us home. Nice and slow. Carthage limped into the darkness between stars, looking exactly like what everyone expected it to be, nothing worth noticing. Nothing at all. And somewhere in the silence of space, humanity continued to wait, continued to watch, and continued to prepare for the day when someone else would make the mistake of thinking they were weak. It was a mistake that always ended the same way.